one of the things that is lost, one of the things that is lost in the study of mythology is this, and it's huge. There's a difference between the study of myth and the study of mythology. A huge difference. Huge. One might say, not every one, but one among many might say, Aesop was the master of mythology, not of myth, not of the logos, but of the logic of story, of mythology. Aesop, one might say. Aesop is universally beloved quietly, beneath the surface. This video once again is about the Paschal amulet, the Paschal amulet, the Paschal mystery, the Pascal mystery. Pascal, Pascal, as in Blaise Pascal. Pascal, Paschal, as in the Paschal, the Pascal, the Paschal. The Easter, the Pascha, the Pasqua, the Pascha, the Passion, the Easter of Christos, Christ. Pascal. In one sense, Aesop is the beneficiary of the title of Grand Soothsayer. Yeah. Grand Master of mythology. On the opposite side of time, BCE, CE, depends what we call C. All the BC AD people, all the BC, because there's people who prefer, I mean, I was raised on BC AD, so that's what I prefer, just because that's the way I'm wired, right? And people get mad about the BCE CE because of Common Era, before Common Era. But since it's not called Common Era or before Common Era, because it's called BCE and CE, you can just replace Christian with common, and then it's before the Christian era, BCE, CE. Problem solved, right? Take your pick. It applies to both situations. Maybe that's better. A better secular world. A better religious world. Good. Why does it have to be a problem? Well, I know all too well why. Because that poisonous thought is built inside of me myself, so I know why. But I can also imagine how perhaps within our children, our grandchildren, I mean, I don't have children that I know of. I don't have children that I know of, and I don't have grandchildren, As far as I know, my branch dies with me. So far as I know. So far as I understand today. But I led a lewd and lascivious lifestyle in my past. And I don't know what I don't know. So I'll never be able to completely shake that nagging superstition that my offspring unknown are out there, which is a terrifying revelation. Terrifying and comforting in that if I don't know, it means that I was such a bad person. That if I have a child or if I have had a child that I don't know about, it's because the mother of that child, my consort, from a moment in time, determined that I was insufficient to be a father. And I could very well see how one could have made that decision about me. It's not the topic for today, but it came up. Dealt with it best I could. I'm not the only one like that. That's a lot of us. A lot of us. The Pascal Mystery Man. Easter. Dying on the cross. 3 criminals on the cross. Criminals of state. 2 entered the kingdom of heaven that day. 2 out of 3 ain't bad. That's what Meatloaf said. Meatloaf. So I finally, I think this has taken me about 100 hours to make. I'm probably exaggerating by half. But definitely 50 hours to make. Okay, definitely 25 hours. But a lot of thinking. The whole idea is that these, 44? That these 44 tetrahedra create a ring-like object, or a hemispheric. The idea is that this is half of a ring, or a pseudo-ring. I don't know what the right term would be, because it's made out of 3-dimensional objects that orient themselves in a ring-like frieze. Frieze is kind of like a bounded 2-dimensional plus. Not quite, a frieze in art is not quite a statue, is not quite a sculpture. It bridges the gap between the second and the third dimension. So like a frieze in art, I kind of think of mathematically as like a 2.5-dimensional object, right? Oh, a frieze, So one of the ways perhaps we could conceive of a 4-dimensional object, or a 6-dimensional object, or an 8-dimensional or a 4-dimensional object, or an 8-dimensional object, or a 6-dimensional object, or an 11, or a 14, or a 17, or an 18-dimensional object. Like one of the ways, or a monster group. One of the ways we can begin to think of that, or conceive that, because we think we understand a 1-dimensional object. We think we understand a 2-dimensional object. We think we understand a 3-dimensional object. And then we get into these Poincare transformations, and then we get into like algebraic topologies and different morphisms and different macrame or crochet, convex, concave topologies of dimensions. But like, what about just like something simple, like a frieze, like a mathematical, artistic frieze? A 2.5 dimensional object. It's a 3-dimensional object, but it mostly partakes in 2-dimensional qualities. So a tetrahedron in and of itself is actually at pretty much as 3-dimensional as you can get, even though we commonly think of 3 dimensions in the XYZ plane. So normally, like the cube, one of the reasons why, I hate to say it, but one of the reasons why symbolically Islam is suspect is because of the Kaaba in Mecca. I know I'm butchering the words, because there's that big black cube-like object with the other stone encased in one of its corners, which is the real deal, plus like the fabrics, etc. But like its shape as a cube is suspect because it's actually even less than the shape of a pyramid. And a pyramid is suspect because it's not a tetrahedron. There are 3 objects that are the most important objects in the world: a point, a tetrahedron, and a sphere. And when you have a point in the center of a tetrahedron with a sphere around it, that's the starting point. And it's a different way of conceiving of an essential, necessary. God is necessary. Who made God? Does even God know who made God? Right. 1 is the loneliest number from that movie Magnolia. The soundtrack from Magnolia. 1 is the loneliest number that you'll ever something. No. Oh. Yeah. Like, what if we shifted our attention from praying to God? I mean, it's just a what if. It's just a thought experiment. What if we prayed for God? I didn't expect to go here today. Yeah, the Eucharist, right? The Trinity. All these different ways of building 3 into Christianity. 33. Right? Well, 33 is 3 times 11. 2 times 11 is 22, which is the number of letters in the Hebrew alphabet. What I like about this tetrahedron is that I figured out how to make one that I could fold into a tetrahedron. It's a pretty sweet shape, really. Symbolically very powerful. I won't comment on it. But it very nicely folds into a tetrahedron. The simplest object in existence and the most confounding. Because once again, we think of 3 dimensions in the XYZ, but this precedes XYZ, is more rational, is more stable. If you build a cube and apply pressure to it, it has no strength whatsoever. If you simply build a cube as a cube without supports, it is shit. A tetrahedron, however, if you build it properly, which takes less material but more precision, that simple precision, the precision of the primary existence, compulsory, like it has to be, it's stronger. And that's the strength of God. In a sense, you could say, like, broadly speaking. No, I do believe Descartes. I do believe God favored and loved Descartes and gave Descartes what Descartes needed to do, what Descartes had to do for God, for the sake of God, and for the sake of us. God gave to Descartes what God needed to bring us, after Descartes, closer to God. Same with Pascal. And I guess all I'm saying is that at this time in history, now we need more Pascal. Descartes' done what Descartes had to do, pretty much. There's a little bit more to be squeezed out of that lime. But pretty much Descartes has done what Descartes needed to do. And the marginal ramifications of that, as it plays out a little further, will progress up to a point. But it is now time to siphon the lost, mysterious, magical implications of Descartes, of Pascal. Now, when I say magical, Christians, so-called Christians in name, maybe so, maybe not, definitely including me, but like, with almost the entire, like, Christians, Christosphere, the modern day nominal, lowercase n, the lowercase n nominal Christosphere is kind of shit, kind of garbage, but thank God for it. Without that backstop, we'd all be lost. So, it's just everything's so meh. God, I've heard it 1,000 times, But yet, at the same time, it's a little bit like the world religious are just like closing their eyes to the ugliness of the world because they can't stand it anymore, and they're just standing back and holding on to their sacraments and just clinging to themselves and to their God and saying, like, stop, like, let me be innocent, let me be lovely, let me be beautiful, let me be hopeful, let me be innocent. Please just, like, stop attacking me. Let me be innocent in my ignorance. And that's not that. There are truly the innocent ignorant. And by the jaded wise, right? I'm old, so I have I have a piece of wisdom simply for my age because I've been able to see cycles longer than some other people. So it's like, okay, things ebb and flow. Okay, right, okay, this trend, I thought it was going to go this way, it went that way. So I have a little, just a smidge of wisdom from my age. Even though I've made every wrong decision, but I'm still here. And there are many of my, well, not many, but certainly more than a few of my peers, the young folk I grew up with, who are better off than me, better positioned to my mind, and who are no longer here on this earth. They're gone now. And I'm still here. What's success? What is success, right? We're all going to face that blackness. It doesn't matter how long. I mean, or at least this is an argument one could make, especially people like me who feel like their time is short. Even though I've been given a mandate to live long enough. But if I don't. I confuse messenger. I confuse messages from the messenger, the Holy Ghost, because I am not infused with the Holy Ghost. I am not in the position of eudaimonia. I am possessed by daimons. And thankfully, some of them are sympathetic with eudaimonia, the Holy Ghost. Capital E, eudaimonia. Yeah, but anyway, what I wanted to get to, I finally finished painting this. I think I have the right colors. I like it. We have the purple and red twine of Mary. Mary who spun the purple and red twine. I can't remember what book. I know there are apocrypha with that reference. The purple and red twine. Mary. And then the white and the red, but it's not quite white. In this lighting, it looks a bit yellow on the camera, but as I'm looking at it, it looks a bit grayish brown. But it's because I mixed like some yellow ochre and some like raw umber with some white that was like a grayish white, bluish gray white. Oh, but anyway, it harmonizes nicely. It's a nice little object. I like it. I like the colors. I like what it's doing. And I like that if I were to fully build it out into this object, it would look pretty cool. But I also still really like this. There was no yellow in this object when I made it. But because I put the orange here, and because it's gathered upon itself a patina over the years, which is very much accentuated. As I'm looking at this, it looks, once again, duller and browner, but the yellow is being pulled out in the video, which I'm watching as I make the video. And I like it. And I like that color. So perhaps once I build this out further. But I must get to the Mysterium Rationis, right? Because there's the Paschal mystery, the Easter mystery, the Easter magic, the Easter ritual, the Easter sorcery. One of the things that Christians need to come to understand, right? Because it's so much like, ooh, magic, ooh, sorcery, ooh, yoga, ooh. And granted, I'll grant you, if you're raising a family, if you're so caught up in the day of the world to get by and to provide for yours, I get it. But for those of us who have any time whatsoever to expend upon intellectual projects, the novelty of thought, we should devote ourselves, maybe, or some of us definitely should devote ourselves to unlocking these mysteries so that we, as a people, as a species, as humanity, breach thresholds. We are meant to leave things behind. The process of evolution is not simply climbing toward more survival, more offspring. It's climbing toward perfection. And part of climbing toward perfection means leaving things behind. So one of the things we think about when we're talking about extinction, a lot of things are becoming extinct right now. But at the same time, if we think about humanity cosmologically, we as humans are always pointing out, humans do this bad, humans do this bad, humans do this bad, humans do this bad. Yes, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely 100% right. And what are you saying? Humans do this like the universe and like animals do this. Humans are bad because they do this like the universe does it, cold and dark. And humans do this like animals do it, teeth and claw. Yes. And then on the other side, it's like, oh, but also humans do, you humans, right? You just said what we humans do. Well, you humans do this and this, like that dark, cold, fucking cold, calculating universe does. And you humans do this upon the earth, upon the world, upon your neighbors, upon your land. Like every other animal, every other dark thing, every other story of human conception, by the way, but of all the bad things, that's what you do. Yes. Yes, 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 yes. Humans are a scourge upon the earth. Everything is a scourge upon the earth. The earth is the scourge upon the earth. Without humans, the earth is just a pretty death machine, man. Without humans, the earth, nothing else lives like we live. Novelty. The precious, sacramental, really, it's all tied up, Go to church, go to church, go to church. Everybody's got a church in their living room, an entertainment center, right? You got a screen here, you got a speaker here, right? I mean, give or take. You might have a $200 entertainment center. You might have a $50 entertainment center. You might have a $50,000 entertainment center. But it's all looking to do the same thing. In its triptych layout, in its, an entertainment center is an altarpiece. The more wealthy you are, my job is to paint what I consider wealthy people like their homes, $1 million homes, $500,000 homes, $10 million homes. That's, I live in this, this very nice place. um. Anyway. But yeah, the more expensive the home, the more the entertainment center resembles an actual altarpiece. Cross culturally, but certainly Western. But yeah. Also, I like this because it reminds me of Princess Kate's ensemble at the coronation. I really liked the Byzantine chant. I really liked the Byzantine chant at the coronation. I was like totally like, well, I wanted to know what Mother you know who and Father you know who thought about it. Let's just put it like that. The Byzantine chant at the king's coronation, which I had to watch a few times to appreciate. At first I was like, meh, but then I was like, whoa. But anyway, the whole thing about this object is that if these two planes, this red plane and this purplish puce plane, if they sit on the same plane perfectly, then this is a rational object as one half of a ring which means that this object is as real as the Cartesian grid. But this is completely unknown and real and more efficient and even more reasonable without the, if I can prove this is real, intuitively from that, I have an intuition about this object. And then if I can use what I know that is unintuitive, that is analytic in an XYZ context, if I can use what I know about Descartes and Pythagoras, I will be able to determine if this object exists. If I prove it doesn't exist, it means I've spent a lot of time on this. A lot of time. If I find out that this plane and this plane don't exist on the same plane, I'll throw it all away. It doesn't matter. But then I'll know, and I can abandon it once and for all, forever. Unless physicality has a elasticity that's not appreciated in that concretious object. So there's that. Disclaimer. I got too proud. Fuck. Where'd it go? Shit. Yeah, but Buddha, butter, better, butter. The whole idea was with this is that now what I have to do, now that I'm happy with having made this object so I can have something to look at, I kind of want to put pins. I kind of want to put little pins at every meet point. It's like I have to name all these points. I don't know how I'm going to do that, but it's so crazy how something so... This is so close to the number one. This is such a small pattern. Like, really, this is such a small pattern. But it's so difficult to describe. And that's where mythology succeeds. Because mythology is not myth, nor is it logic. It's where logic and myth meet. If you solely study logic, you're lost. If you solely study myth, you're lost. You need logic and myth. Math and story. Geometry and music. Poetry's built in. It's almost like you don't need poetry because poetry exists in that interplay of those others. But you do need poetry sometimes, some of us, to unlock the others. All these magical keys, cheese, all these magical keys, Keys, all these magical keys, Quis, all these magical keys, Chis. But yeah, what I'm gonna have to do with this object is like I'm gonna have to take this plane here, or this one, whatever. I'm gonna have to lay it down on a Cartesian grid and center it on a Cartesian grid, kind of like this, right? Like so. Say this is the center of a Cartesian grid, so I'm gonna have to like center my triangle base on it, right? And then I'm going to have to calculate up a few spines. And then those spines will start to create like a line. But that line is going to be off center, right? So I have a spine going up this way from this line because this base triangle is centered on this line, which means this whole object skews off. So once I count up a few, I can then figure out how to compensate for that within my like Z plane or my Y plane or whatever. However I decide to, whatever. And then I can align the spine and go from there. But then, because this is essentially 11 amplituhedra. That means that my midpoint is 5.5 amplituhedra, which is this point, which is always hard to find because this isn't a symmetric object. It's like an anti-asymmetric object or it's an anti-asymmetric object. This object is. Yeah, you can clip this. And an anti-asymmetric object. We'll try that again. This is an anti-asymmetric object. Third time's the charm. This is an anti-asymmetric object. But what it is 11 amplituhedra, the plural way of saying amplituhedron, 1 amplituhedron, 2 amplituhedra, 3 amplituhedra, 11 amplituhedra. That's what this object is. I didn't know it would make this, what I presume is a hemispheric 2.5D frieze-like ring. I didn't know that at the time, but that's what I found. See something, say something. I saw something. This! Now I'm saying it. Right. How's that for anti-terrorism? Novelty! Beauty! For its own sake. Things that fit together. Weird. The most simple object in the world. So that's why I'm attracted to this. However, I could be wrong. So it will be interesting to find if I can even prove it as being what I think it might be, or proving that it isn't. I have to prove it either way. And either way, I will learn something. But it will be a relief either way. Because if it proves what I think it is, well, I'll just go on and on and on and on and on about it. But if it's not, I'll just discard it easily, no problem. Because I got all kinds of other shit I'm interested in. And it will be a relief to get rid of something I don't need. Even if I'm mesmerized or hypnotized by its beauty. From my standpoint, if you don't think this is beautiful, I don't blame you. But I feel as though there are people who do. I guess it's to them I'm mostly speaking. But we have to be willing. Like, I want this to be real. But if it's not, I need to be the first to throw it in the fire. I love how this is reading as yellow, depending on how I hold it. Because on the camera, because in real life it's very gray. But there's a lot of yellow in it, and it's showing up with different lighting and different reflections. I love that. And I love how flat the blue is. I love that. And when I first made this, before I painted it, I'd have to because of the elasticity, because it's just made out of index cards and Scotch tape. Well, yeah, Scotch magic tape, but anyway, to make it flat, I'd have to push it together a little bit. But now that I've painted it, the paint is kind of contracted, kind of the same way with wood. Paint fucks with wood. Paint fucks with paper. I spray painted it first to try to seal it up. But anyway, the acrylic has tightened it up, because acrylic does kind of shrink, and so now it's I gotta kind of push down a little bit to make it perfectly flat. But it just lines up too well for such a weird shape. Such a beauty. Such a fucking beauty. I mean, don't you want that to be hemispheric? If you're into math or geometry, it's wouldn't that get your rocks off, so to speak? I mean, wouldn't that be the bomb, so to speak? And if you're into religion, those Marianne colors, well, I mean, couldn't hurt. Love it. But I love it for what it symbolizes, The mystery isn't only in the mythos. The mystery is also in the logos. If this object is real, if it exists, it's my contention, it's my conjecture, my intuitive conjecture, that this object exists and this object exists, and that they exist together. in this object as a rational composition. Period. With only built from the simplest object in physical existence, besides a point and a sphere, and it would well be understandable if the point in the sphere were force distributively, if a point in a sphere were a single unit, it would make sense that they would be abstractly force distributively. Sorry. I'm just trying to find a way to talk about it. Like, compose tetrahedrally. What would be a more efficient way to distribute forces in a sphere with a center? What would be a better way than a tetrahedron to distribute force distributions? I'm just asking the question. Right. I'm just asking the question. What's a better way? I don't know. Seems a reasonable question. Seems a reasonable answer. And if I have my intuition right, seems a reasonable answer. More reasonable than even a cube. That this object is even more reasonable than a cube. Precedes it. What? Maybe. I don't know, I gotta do the math. If not, I'll throw it away. But I will be grateful for this learning process, because there are other objects I made, and even I made videos about. What preceded this object was what I called, I can't remember what I called it, it was like a kite. It was like a kite. And when I dropped it from the ceiling, it would land on its feet. It would do like a whew. And it was geometrically incorrect. But it was a fun object. And it led me to this, which to my mind is more correct and might even be correct. But if it's not, then I know that if I'm still to live on, that this mistake will lead me to the next mistake that's closer to the truth. And then, if that's not the prayer for my today, I don't know what is. May my missteps lead me closer to you. May my missteps lead me closer to you, oh dear God.